I think to me, I'll be a little brutal and say that that's a bit of a lazy response.
You know what, Telana? It's only that I can't use the four-letter words here to curse, but I'll tell you it's a lot of nonsense.
Yeah, I don't believe that at all. And you might have seen my reaction as you said it.
There were some of the initial reactions I got when I asked 12 people the same question around funding.
Welcome to Risk and Rise, the podcast where we explore the journey of overcoming the fear of failure, embracing risk, and achieving success in entrepreneurship, creativity, and personal growth. I'm your host, Telana Simpson, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you. Together we'll discover the strategies, insights, and shifts in our thinking and attitudes that are needed to turn setbacks into stepping stones and transform fear into fuel for success. So grab your coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's episode of Risk and Rise.
Welcome to Risk and Rise, where we are pushing the boundaries when it comes to getting over our fear of failure and getting going with whatever it is we want to create in this world. And in this season, I have asked a number of people the same questions. The first question was I asked, how do you come up with a business idea? So if you look back a few episodes, you'll see all their answers to it. Today, we're exploring the second question I asked them all, which was around funding, and specifically not having funding and using that as an excuse to not start a business. Here is how I pitched the question to 12 of my guests. All right, then also what comes to mind when someone says, I can't start because I don't have the funds?
Also another fantastic question, Telana.
Was Kerryne Krause of Cryoslices Technology.
Because my experience in over 20 years of being an entrepreneur is that it wasn't the money I needed.
Erica Schofield of Thunder Fund had this first response.
No one does. Let's try anyway. It's not a very helpful answer, I'm sure. But
And today we're going to be listening to everyone's answers and hopefully no longer using not having funds as an excuse.
No way.
For a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people, they don't have funds immediately available. They don't have them like in their bank account ready to go. That is a strategy that we actually have to develop and save, build up our own capital if we're going to self-fund. But they also say there's a lot of funds available, but as we're going to get into, not a lot of good ideas for funders willing to back. But what if we don't actually need funds? Right? There's a lot that we can do right from where we are, right here, right now. And it was Kerryne who actually said that what she needed most was not money.
Because my experience in over 20 years of being an entrepreneur is that it wasn't the money I needed. I needed the skills, I needed the support, I needed the solutions, I needed the incubation. I needed those things way more than I needed the money.
Audrey Nupier picks up this idea that it's not money that we need.
I've had many people come to me asking for advice. And the number one thing they want to do is they want you to help them write a business plan because they want to fill in some type of form so that they can have access to some type of funds. There's all this money. There's a lot of money available. And what you don't need money, you need a plan. So have your plan.
Dr. Chomba Chuma, a serial entrepreneur, introduces us to the idea of the funding myth.
I get a lot of people coming to me with business ideas, and I'll tell you what, it's called the funding myth. The reason why it's such a myth is because people think that businesses are started using capital. Businesses are not started using capital. Businesses are all about ideas and how you're going to be able to meet a certain need in the marketplace. There's this myth, and especially so in South Africa, And I mean, don't even go too far, because there's a gentleman that I've come to know, and yesterday I saw a lot of missed calls on my WhatsApp, because he's been trying to get hold of me, and I've told him exactly what he needs to do, but he doesn't want to do it. I think it's also a question of laziness to some extent.
And this point about being lazy. So often I think we are too lazy to do the work that we need to do in order to get the funding or to start the business. And therefore we use not having something as the excuse. It's easier to say, I don't have the funds to start, versus it is to say, I actually don't want to do the hard work. Jonathan Smit, entrepreneur now angel investor, echoed Chuma's sentiment.
I think, to me, I'll be a little brutal and say that that's a bit of a lazy response.
But back to Chuma.
The two things that you have to overcome the funding myth. One is you need to come up with an idea, research on it, and then you need to do it to a certain level of success. And if you do that within a very short period of time, then you come to somebody who has the funds, they'll be able to give those funds to you.
Kerryne also made this point that we really have to have a good idea and work on that first, and the funding will follow.
I found when you've got a good business, a good concept, or a good technology, the world is looking for those things. Trust me, the world is hungry for innovation, for quality. And when you are building something of that's authentic, the money comes. I have never struggled to attract money into my business, from grant funding to venture capitalists to private equity to local to international funding. I have never failed to attract money because I have been diligent about building a good business plan, good technology, good concepts that the world needs and wants. And there is more money out there than there is innovation and concepts and good entrepreneurs or jockeys to back.
Allon Raiz of Raiz Corp feels that we should be focusing on having a business case for our idea, making sure it's viable and not using the external excuse of not having money.
Yeah, I think that is, once again, it's an external control, because when you have a compelling economic right to exist, when there is a business case that is very compelling, well thought through, money will follow that. So it's do the work on getting the compelling business case, the compelling economic right to exist. Is there really a market? I've got a product that's really differentiated. Is there margin? Can I sell that? You know, do I have the ability and desire to sell it? And so if those are in place, generally money follows. And then, because if you've got that, then you'll go out and you'll find the money. Money will follow. There's plenty of people looking to support entrepreneurs. There are plenty of organizations, but there's more good money chasing ideas than there are good ideas chasing money.
So it all starts with a business idea. But even then, when you have a really good business idea, you may not actually need funding to get it going. Back to Jonathan.
It depends what the idea is, right? But most ideas don't require much money at all to start. I mean, let's say like starting an e-commerce store these days, it's super easy. The world has become so democratized with this. There are any level of as a service businesses that you can pay a very small amount of money to get going. It really doesn't take a lot. It's like what you would spend on having a fancy dinner or just a nice dinner out somewhere. So I think 10, 20 years ago, that might have been a legitimate response or excuse, but it certainly isn't now. You can absolutely start. Registering a business costs all of 100, 200 Rand these days. Opening up a bank account costs all of 40 Rand a month. Starting, it really doesn't cost that much. I mean, sure, if you're not a developer and you want to develop something, maybe that's a bit more of a trick. But then you can partner. Then you can find a co-founder who can code. and then you become two people who have this, you pull together, and that's what equity is for. So maybe you then handle business and admin and all the rest of it, and they start doing some coding. That's what working relationships and partnerships are about. So I don't think a lack of money is an excuse. There are, there's more than enough that you can do to get going.
Anne Gray of Solutioneers also says we don't need much to get going. Let's hear her thoughts.
So, it depends what business you want to start. If you wanted to start a business that required a lot of capital input, like you wanted to open a factory, or you were going to need to import raw materials from China, I would say then you need to join an accelerator or an incubator. But you're going to have to prove yourself. You're going to have to prove that you have something unique. You have a unique formula. You have a unique process. You have something worth patenting before anyone's going to invest in you. If you are wanting to start a business, let's say you want to start a social media marketing business, you can start that at night on a very dodgy laptop. Doesn't need to be special, and you can really start investing in your business like R1 at a time. Nick Harabolas wrote a book, and in that book he started a business with 5,000 rand. Started a sock business. I think it was a sock. Yeah.
Yes.
5,000 rand. That's all he had, and he started a business with 5,000 rand. So it is possible. You just have to have the courage of your convictions that it can be done. And you also, I think a lot of times people want to quit their job and go 100% into entrepreneurship. But unless you actually have the capital to float yourself for a little while, that is really very difficult to do. It's hard to be cash flow positive from day one. So to have saved up a little bit, or to do it as a side hustle until you're 100% ready for it to take over your life, I think is a prudent way of doing it.
Look, Zuki, a serial entrepreneur, investor, and the man behind Startup Tribe, says that we just need to start small. Let's hear his thoughts to my question.
Nobody has the funds, nobody has the money. Some people are born luckier than others. They have a support structure. So some people know that no matter how bad things get, they can go home, have a good night's rest, electricity is paid for, food is paid for. So they don't have a survival need. But I have never, or very rarely, and I say this also as chairs to government funds where we invest in startups. There is no funding out there, the classical funding. But there's nothing stopping you from having chats. Let's say you're passionate about agriculture. We have a course, funny enough, by Professor Malan that teaches you how to start a farm if you live in a shack, and how to earn between 2,000 to 4,000 rand a month. Now, just on the piece of land in your shack. Now, obviously, if you're living in a township where there's no space, it's different, but you get my point. And what he's arguing for is that you can use almost rubbish to start a farm. You can grow 10 chilies, a couple of carrots, and then package 1 chili, 1 carrot, 1 tomato in a plastic bag and sell them in your street. You don't need big marketing. You're not supplying checkers. And so the point that I'm making here is start bloody small. Speak to people. If you love restaurants or hospitality, work in a hospitality environment. If you have an entrepreneurial flair, go to the manager and say, look, I really want to start my own business, but maybe I can do something within your business. Is there something, a service you would love to offer that you want me to help you start? Find a way to piggyback on other people's resources.
Richard Nilsson of My Pet Go brings in the concept now of also not giving up our day job immediately and jumping straight into a new business. A few of my guests actually spoke about this as a strategy to how we can start a business if we don't have sufficient funds to keep us afloat. He also suggests that we start small.
Right. So ask yourself, what is the bare minimum you need to get going with something while you keep on doing what you're doing, right? So let's say you're employed, you get paid X per month, that feeds your bills. So I would then kind of start to put this together evening time or after your lunch break or on your weekends. And then let's say you need, for the sake of it, $50,000, and that will build you your application that's going to do so and so. It's going to build you the website. It's going to pay for your servers. It's going to pay for a couple of guys that can build it for you. And again, there's tons of great platforms like Upwork where you can find any person that has a skill set that you might not have, that you need in order to get this done. And things can be done much cheaper than you can imagine, right? You can build things today with very little money. So I think, if you can't raise it through friends and family or angel investors, the question is, could you take some of what you're earning now and put it into this thing that you're doing, and maybe do it at a slower pace? It doesn't have to happen so quickly, right? And that's the thing with entrepreneurs in the tech space. They're so worried that someone else is going to build the same thing that they're building, and therefore they're rushing. I'm one of them, so I know. And you don't always have to rush. Take your time. It's okay. The market is often big enough for multiple players, right? It's not like the winner takes it all, right? I mean, that's true for some things, but in most cases, it's not true.
And the thing that I've learned from my entrepreneurial journey, and especially my one matchstick story, is that whatever you need to get going is right now within your reach, in the space, in the community, in your zone of influence. It is there, ready, waiting for you to take that first step. And I'm not the only one who thinks this. We're going to hear now from Audrey and Kerryne again about the starting where you are.
I wake up in the morning and think, how can I make 1 cent, 2 cents? Because I don't know where the next cent is coming from. That's all it is. It's just taking the 1 cent that you've got and making it 2 cents. How are you going to do that? With what you've got in your hand, with the things around you, without going anywhere. We want to go places and we want to travel overseas, and we think that we need to be able to this, and we don't have skills for that, and we don't have money for that. No. What do you have right now? Right now. Make a list of everything you've got. Include your mental capacity, whatever. What do you have right now? And start there.
And Kerryne adds to this.
I say to entrepreneurs, there is something in your hand you can start with right now. Right now, even if it is just your time. You can take an hour of your Netflix time and you can start putting a business plan together every night. Just take the business plan and just start putting a business plan together. Start researching your competitors. When I've built prototypes for my products, I've gone to Westpac and Pick and Pay and Mr. Price and bought a plastic tub and something here and cut it up and form my widget together. There is always something in your hand that you can start with. And the minute you actually start getting that energy and that momentum going, it's like the entire universe colludes to help you. Doors will open, people will come across your path, you'll start to get momentum, and entrepreneurs are resourceful.
Absolutely. Entrepreneurs are very resourceful, and Kerryne is one of the amazing examples of that resourcefulness. If you go back and listen to her episode. Renier Kriel of the Open Letter actually adds to this a bit more when he talks about not only that entrepreneurs are resourceful, but how we should be looking at the game of entrepreneurship.
So entrepreneurship is a game that works best within constraint. And because where there's constraint, there's creativity required, right? So I would encourage anybody that, is looking at the constraint of funding to actually see it as part of the challenge. Like if I put a gun to your head and say, you absolutely have to do something, even if you don't have funds, what would you do? And then often people would say, maybe I'll start this. I wanted to build an app, but maybe now I'll start it on WhatsApp and see if I can get some orders. Like, okay, well, then go do that. And that's really, one of the benefits of entrepreneurship, and the risk associated is often that, you almost have the proverbial gun to your head because if this thing doesn't work, you have no income, right? So embracing that as the constraint is necessary for creativity can help you make that first step and saying, well, if I'm absolutely forced to start this with no funding, what would I do? And then people get really creative, right? I've seen people launch businesses using email, using WhatsApp, using Google Forms, using physically selling things to people. Like there's a whole host of things you can actually do if you embrace that constraint and say, okay, well, I can't complain about anything. I need to make do with what I have. So let's see what I can do.
And in season 1, we also spoke to George Scola, who is a stroke survivor and an amazing entrepreneur. He's just started a new business, but that's an aside. His life philosophy is one of adapting, improvising, and overcoming. Here's what he had to say when I asked him this question.
Adapt, improvise, overcome. Start with the low-hanging fruits. Put in the hard yards. Okay. I've done that now. I've started a business. I know I'm undercapitalized. But what we're going to do is we're going to put in the hard yards, get in go to your low-hanging fruits and build it slowly. There's nothing wrong with building a business slowly. Eliminate the funding as a crux. Just put in more time and put in more effort.
Great. So we know we need a good idea and we need to start where we are, start small, and we need to work hard. Paul Smith of Civitas really emphasizes that we have to start building up a track record if we ever hope to achieve big funding for our great idea.
So I think that you have certain types of businesses, and some businesses can be started with no money, where basically like a service business, you don't really need money to start. And then I think there is something to be said about being a little bit strategic around long shot, ideas that need money, like putting yourself in a position that you can actually raise the money if you need to borrow it. So if you are looking to start an insurance company, which needs a bunch of cash, it might make sense to become an actuary and work in the insurance industry for 10 years before doing that type of company. Or make your first business maybe a 1 or 2 run success where you get some runs on the board, you make your first few million, and now you've actually had a success under your belt. When you start your second, you've got a little bit of a network, you've actually got some cash, you could potentially then raise the money. So my advice there was just be a little bit more strategic around, I can't raise the money. Rather put yourself in a position you can raise the money or start a business that doesn't require.
Chomba and Jonathan also build on this idea of having a track record, of having some kind of experience to show people the reason why they should be investing in us.
But if you cannot prove yourself, then why would someone give you money when you don't have any track record? And then you put all this business plan in place just because it's how it's done. There's a template for business, but if someone even questions you about that business plan, you won't know anything about it. And I'll give you a good example. A few years ago, actually last year, we wanted to fund one of our businesses, and we partnered with a very well-known medical doctor in the industry he's one of the older entrepreneurs who has built a lot of hospitals. He's very successful as an entrepreneur. And unfortunately, and we were in very advanced stages to get the funding from the bank. And unfortunately, this gentleman passed on. He got a heart attack and passed on, which was rather sad. But guess what? All the banks, we had 2 major banks, all the banks withdrew their offers for the funding they were supposed to give us. And you know why? It's because our funding was tagged on this guy's reputation as a good entrepreneur. He has proven himself for the last 30 years. And the banks are happy to give him a lot of money. But the minute he's no longer there, the banks find it risky that he's not there anymore. Why? Because he carries a lot of trust and he carries a lot of weight in that whole application. So what I tell people who are saying that they don't have funds is show us at least what you've done and get into the details of what your idea is all about. You'll find somebody who's never sold any single thing. They've never even sold the simplest party for kids. And all of a sudden, they're asking for 5 million rands to start a business. How are they going to handle 5 million when they've never handled 20 rand? So it's as an entrepreneur, you have to think about, you have to dream big, but start small. If you start small and prove yourself in 1, 2, 3, 4 occasions, by the time you're asking for more money, it becomes easy. So I don't buy into that funding myth. And for me, I've lost money giving people money to start a business. All of a sudden, I realized, oh my goodness, you give somebody who can't manage even 15 rand, and now you want them to manage 30,000 rands. They're not going to do that. So the funding is a function of your previous record and the detail to which you know the industry and your business. If you have those two, you cannot miss funds in this country. And not just in this country, anywhere in the world.
And once you've actually got something, as soon as you've got something, something to show, some little bit of product, there definitely are people who would be willing to fund that. Maybe a little bit harder these days because risk capital has dried up a little bit, but showing something is what is required, not just a fancy presentation or a PowerPoint. That's not good enough. It's got to be something to show for it.
And just going back to Erica again, she is a specialist in crowdfunding. And it's very interesting to see how she describes crowdfunding as a mechanism that can help us to not only prove our idea to ourselves and to others, but also build up that experience, that track record that we're going to need.
I would actually say, look at crowdfunding, look at fund of fund or that type. It's rewards based. So when you fund, you put up rewards or incentives for people to back you. So you're not asking for donations. It's an exchange and a thank you. And where that can be incredibly useful for someone who's thinking about starting a business and they're not sure is you don't have to go start the business, and maybe start it as a project. So, for example, you've got the beautiful furniture in the background. So if I may, I'll use that as an example. Is first put up, say, guys, what's your first need? Do you need a workshop or a retail space like this, a pop-up? That would actually be amazing. Like, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to do a pop-up exhibition or store, and I need this amount of money to make it happen. But rather than asking for donations, you can buy my products, maybe at a discount, or maybe because they're very unique and I'll only ever make one of these because it's for you. And you set up a campaign around rewards based. And then what that does is kind of start saying your intention, and amazing things happen when you start saying, I'm going to do this. It also lets you test, like, do people want to own your stuff? Sometimes they don't, quite often they do, but it gives you a test. And the challenge, you don't have to have made it yet, because that's crowdfunding is like, hi, I'm going towards this idea. So you can test, and you'll find some products work better than others. Cool. So if you want to start, and then you do get that experience of trying to sell. And then if you do raise the money to do the pop-up exhibition, then you've got to deliver on the product. So you'll also get really practical experience on what delivery costs and how long it does take to make. And if you do it right, and this is, to be honest, somewhere where I've had to learn it over a few campaigns, is you will keep in contact with everyone who supported you ongoing. And that way you build a relationship and a client base. And then I really believe if you go through all of that, that inner voice will tell you, yes, you can. And you've also got some history. So if you do then want to go to a bank and ask for a loan, or an investor, or, or just even you internally yourself going, is it worth the risk? You've got a history of, I did this, So yeah, give yourself a try through crowdfunding for your business would be kind of the idea.
And lastly, there's always a bit of a mindset and a life skill. And Allon says it perfectly here.
People think they're good ideas, but they're not. And instead of being in defense of a bad idea, go take the feedback. When you go out there and say, what's wrong with this? Why wouldn't you finance this? Then you get the rejection, or you can see the body language. What is wrong with this? Take that feedback and iterate and work that through. But most people get defensive around their thing and don't evolve it. If I look at now the thing that I'm building right now, it's been 2 years of feedback, constant and continuous, so until I got it right. And I've got gray hair. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still took 2 years to get it right. And people just want to. I've got this idea, yes, but there's 1,000 people that I've got to grow chickens and supply the supermarket. Okay, well, how many other 1,000 people are there out there who are growing chickens? There's work to be done there first. So I don't believe there's no money. I need funding. You need a compelling economic right to exist before you need money.
So from this variety of answers to that one question that I asked these amazing 12 entrepreneurs, I hope it is challenging you now to not use not having funds as an excuse to actually explore an idea and to get going, because I believe you are resourceful. And so does Kerryne.
Entrepreneurs are resourceful. So when entrepreneurs say, I cannot do X, Y, and Z, then perhaps you're not an entrepreneur. I don't think that's ever come out of my mouth. You will find a way. You will find a way to win, and you need to be resourceful. And resourcefulness is just one of the key characteristics or qualities of an entrepreneur that unless you have, you're not going to go the mile. You're not going to last the journey.
And last the journey is what we're all about here when we're risking and rising together, right? So I do hope that this has given you some ideas. Please go back to the other question I asked these people, which is question 1, which was how do we come up with a business idea? This hopefully gets rid of some of the excuses around funding and gives you ideas on how to take an idea and really work it and develop some kind of track record with it, even if it's a slow build to something, so that you can, if you need for that particular business, if you really need it for that idea, you can then go out and find the money, because apparently there is money out there. There's just not enough good entrepreneurs and good ideas to be backed. This has been Risk and Rise with me, Telana Simpson, and this has been season 1. We started with a bang in February this year, and here we are, 28 episodes in. I am going to be taking a break now and ending off season 1. I'm going to be learning from everything that's happened since we started Risk and Rise, and sharing with you little tidbits as we go. You keep subscribed to the Risk and Rise channel, and you will get a sneak peek of season 2 in the not too distant future, just a couple of weeks, as I prepare and get everything organized and find more people who are willing and eager to share their failures with us and to share their learnings, so that we can all gain some knowledge of and develop our capacity to overcome anything that's holding us back from taking a step forward and starting something. So in the meantime, you can let me know what you'd like to hear in season 2. Send me an email at hello@riskandrise.co.za, or do get in touch. My socials are all over the internet. Just Google Telana Simpson and you'll find me. Do get in touch, keep in touch, and look out for season 2. So thank you so much for listening, and let's go now and risk and rise together.
Thank you for joining me on Risk and Rise, where we face fears, conquer challenges, and rise above adversity to achieve our dreams.
Find out more at riskandrise.co.za.